So we welcome you to this conference entitled Holocaust, Persecution, and Refugees. I'm going to turn this over to Jim to introduce our speakers.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. Craig's very humble. He really had a huge part in putting all this together. Can we give Craig a hand for this one? I have the pleasure of introducing you to a couple of my friends, and it really is an honor to have them here. They're here to tell a story of danger, intrigue, and insecurity. And this may sound like a James Bond type of a movie, but in essence it's not. It's a real-life story. It's a story about a young lady who lived through this over the last few weeks, and she's here to tell her story. Our first speakers are Mr. and Mrs. Greg and Linda Benda, as well as a beautiful young lady named Natalia, or as many of us have known her now as Natalie. Greg is a retired lieutenant colonel who served in the United States Army for 3 decades. Linda is a well-known, dedicated volunteer public servant in St. Clair County. She's been instrumental in a number of countless charitable causes, including recently feeding needy children of food in our schools in the area here. Natalie was born in the Ukraine. About 3 years ago, when I knew very little about the Ukraine, she was living with Greg and Linda, and I had been friends with Greg and Linda. We had gone to dinner and I had met Natalie. She was an exchange student at St. Clair High School during that time. After the completion of her program, she returned to her family in the Ukraine. Well, that was then, and this is now. We've learned a lot about the Ukraine since then. Since then, the Ukraine has been rocked with violence and rebellious insurgency, and of course that major threat to the country to the east of the Ukraine, known as Russia. With the extraordinary efforts of Greg and Linda, Natalie is now safe back in St. Clair County. Unfortunately, she has concerns. Her family and friends are still in the Ukraine. Greg, Linda, and Natalie are here to tell their story of Natalie's life in the Ukraine and her extraordinary journey that has landed her today back at SC4. Let's give a warm welcome to Natalie, Linda, and Greg. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Natalia. I'm from Ukraine, from the small city Chernivtsi. You can see Ukraine in here. One year ago, people, mostly students, were gathering on the streets of the capital of Ukraine, singing Ukrainian national songs. They were dancing and encouraging the president to sign European Union Association Agreement. We wanted a better life. We wanted to step away from the Soviet Union mentality, and we were standing for equal rights, for freedom, for democracy. In November of 2013, the President Viktor Yanukovych chose not to sign an agreement, and he instead chose to have a closer ties with Russia. As a result, a group of young Ukrainians, hoping for a change, became peaceful protesters. Hundreds and thousands of people were gathering in the streets of Kiev, in the capital, known as Independence Square, the capital of Ukraine. Since November 2013, the protests had not stopped. The president ordered police to violently repress and disperse those who were protesting. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the police, you can see it on here, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church opened the doors to people who were running away from the police brutality and took care of injured people. People were not frightened. Protesters returned to Independence Square and opposed to police. People, mostly from West and Central Ukraine, were mobilizing to come and help to stand for their rights, for their equal rights. Unfortunately, police came back too. This time, they were allowed to carry guns, and the first blood was shed. Time went on, and things quickly became worse and worse. The violations of human rights began erupting soon after the protesting, and people could receive a 15 years prison sentence for protesting in the streets, but it didn't stop people either. This wasn't just a protest. It became a national revolution. Ukrainian people rose against the government. The police using guns caused more than 100 deaths. Those are people who were opposing police. You can see this is a police, and all those are people, and they were like a live wall opposing against the police. More than 100 people were killed, and more than 100 were injured and sent to hospitals. We could see the blood on the ground. The bodies of people who died were laid out in the streets, and it was a fight between the government and people were opposing the government. No one is responsible for all those 100 deaths, still till now. On February 22nd, Parliament voted to declare that the chair of the president is vacant due to the fact that Yanukovych, our ex-president, fled Ukraine and no longer exercises his duty. He took all of the Ukrainian money he stole and he went away to Russia. Until now, Russia doesn't give us back the president to arrest him, and he is responsible for all the deaths. So, Parliament named its speaker, Alexander Turchinov, as a temporary president on February 23rd. The Ukrainian Parliament adopted a bill to repeal the law on minority languages, which caused pro-Russian people to protest against the new government. On March 1st, 2014, Ukrainian president, our ex-president, who was at that time in Russia, asked Putin, the president of Russia, if he asked for a military force. He stated, to establish legitimacy, peace, and law order, stability, and defending the people of Ukraine. On the same day, Putin requested and received authorization from the Russian parliament to deploy Russian troops in Ukraine in response to the crisis. Russian troops accordingly mobilized throughout the Crimea and the southeast of Ukraine. We can see this is the Crimea, and now it is part of Russia. By the 2nd of March, Russian troops had complete control over Crimea. The most upsetting part was when the people who lived in the independent Ukraine since 1991 supported and wanted to become independent. They had an aim to go and be with Russia as a federation. My family, my great-uncles and cousins, they who lived in Crimea support and want to be separated. They no longer recognize my family as our own family, and they consider themselves as Russian nationality. I remember every summer we would spend in Crimea, and we would have a great time. We would enjoy the nature and the Black Sea, and now we cannot. Ukrainian people cannot enter the Crimea. Neither Ukrainian people cannot go away from Crimea to be with Ukraine. They are too afraid. In Crimea, they held a referendum with official results stating that at least 95% of voters supported union with Russia. During that time, Russia started sponsoring terrorists on the eastern side of Ukraine. We can see that people had only two choices. Yes, Crimea is Russian, and no, Crimea is not Ukrainian. People didn't have another choice. There were a lot of Russian troops, and even my family told us that they couldn't have another choice because they would be killed, and they were afraid. A lot of Ukrainians the Russian army came to their houses and they would threaten that they will take away their property. So people were just voting to stay alive. When the Russia started supply and giving guns and to the pro-Russian people who then turned into the terrorists, we understood that we need to start to form the army, because Ukraine was only the police country. We were sponsoring all the police officers, but we had never had an army apparently. And you know that army is always with people no matter what, but not in Ukraine. We didn't have standing military, however, as the event unfolded, there was an apparent need for a military expansion. We started to fight against. So now it's Ukraine against the terrorists. On May 25th, Ukraine elected a new president, and things appeared to be getting better. But Russia wanted more than just a Crimea. They started to fight for the eastern lands by sponsoring terrorists. And then a lot of the events happened. For example, terrorists shot Ukrainian army plane with 12 young soldiers on board. Moreover, we all know about Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 was shot down of the eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 people on board. They didn't allow even the military to come and take the bodies. They didn't know how many people were killed. It's hard to talk about because the rights were so violated. The mothers couldn't receive the bodies of their kids. The whole world is against Russia, and the whole world said that Russia did that by sponsoring the terrorists and giving them the force to do that, but no one is still responsible for that airlines shot. What I need to say is it's not just a political war. It became a gas, economical, and geography war. On August 27, 2014, Russian troops invaded Ukraine with tanks and all the military force. We are fighting every day for every piece of Ukraine. We all became united as one, and we are all supporting each other. Thousands of fundraisers were held to help Ukrainian army to fight against, because we didn't have anything. We didn't even have to protect the soldiers. Russian people don't even know what is happening, or are too afraid of the government to stand for their opinion. We forgive them. It's not their fault. It's the government who is fighting against Ukrainian people, and the government is always stronger. The government has more power than people. We signed the peace agreement in Minsk that Ukrainian soldiers won't start fire. However, Russia didn't keep a promise, and lots of soldiers, hundreds of soldiers, are killed, not even fighting, just being under the fire. And it's the sad part. The thing is, when you have a war with Russia, the gas is from Russia. In order to have electricity, we need to use resources from the east part of Ukraine. But now, because on the east is the war, we cannot use all the resources in order to give electricity, gas, all the needs people need to have. So, for example, my Ukrainian mom, she's a teacher, and every day they're turning off the gas just to save for a winter. A lot of people are getting sick because the schools doesn't have a warm environment. It's really cold. Electricity is turning off at the night time. If you didn't do your homework, do it before 7. because then you won't have a chance to do it, because it won't have light, and it's all parts of Ukraine. Every single person of Ukraine is affected by that, and we all understand what is happening. It's not the end. It's not the end. It's only the beginning of the fight. We don't know how long it will take us to be independent. And you all know that in 1991, we became independent from Russia and we started forming our own country. And how many lives would be taken, of soldiers will be taken away in fighting for our freedom. I just keep my hope and I just keep my faith that the Russian people will understand that what is happening, will understand what is happening. They will open their eyes and they will stop the war. I hope that the mothers will see their sons again, wives will kiss their husbands, and kids will hug their daddies. We all are tired of war, and we want to have peace, to be independent in our own country, to have a rights like equal people, and to not be afraid to step out the streets and not to be afraid of the guns, because a lot of the kids experienced how to have a tanks in their country on their streets. As for me, I have been very fortunate. August 14, 2014 was kind of a bittersweet day for me, and I will never forget the day. I came to America. It was on this day two wonderful Americans, my host family, Linda and Greg Benda. I call them Uncle Greg and Aunt Linda. They took action to rescue me from Ukraine before Russia invaded Ukraine, August 27th. I came in August 14th. Both of them worked tirelessly day and night with the support of many people in this community to find a legal way to bring me to the safety of this country, the United States of America. I was quickly rushed to Kiev, to the capital of Ukraine, where was the protesting, to the American embassy in order to escape before the invasion shut the airports down. I had to leave so quickly that I didn't even say goodbye to my friends or family. I didn't have a goodbye party or anything. I left my family, and unfortunately I left my grandparents, my grandfather, who's not in a good condition, and I'm not sure if I will see him again, but yet from the bottom of my heart and with all my love, I love both of my host parents and I love all my friends for what they're trying to do for me and my family. And I'm really thankful to my Ukrainian family who are supporting me in every step. Even though I'm ocean away, miles away, my still friends are supporting me and they really want to give me a better future in order for me to give a chance to change something in Ukraine. And I'm a political science major, and with the help of American education and with the help, I want to be a link between America and Ukraine, and maybe I will change something. I hope so. Thank you for your attention.
Very good job, Natalie. I'm a retired lieutenant colonel with from the United States Army, and I'm currently still employed by the Department of Defense. Natalie's an incredible young lady, and I get emotional because of what took place in her country is wrong, and again, it's being conducted by a country that has caused more difficulties in this world than most other countries you can imagine, although they've got others now that are giving them a run for their money. But what's important is that there's tactics that the Russians use. I studied these tactics throughout my career. I stood in the Fulda Gap for many years waiting for them to attack before the wall came down and we economically crushed Russia during the Reagan administration, in which time the world had a chance to breathe again. When these events started taking place in the Ukraine, I mentioned to my wife, I said, I can tell where this is going. I said, there's going to be a lot of devastation within the Ukraine. And we love Natalie dearly. She's our daughter. By the grace of her parents and their understanding and our desire to give this girl a chance, they allowed her to come and allowed us to give the efforts that we could to bring her here to the safety of this great country. We had a lot of folks help us. Deb and Steve White family was very instrumental in helping bring Natalie here. But my wife, Linda, who will speak here shortly and give you some ideas of what we've been through, this was not an easy task. But the thing that was most important is time. We didn't have time. We had to act quickly. As I was watching the news, watching the signs, and by the nature of my job, information that I had access to, I knew that there was going to be an invasion. And we had to try to get Natalie out of the country before capabilities of doing so were going to be cut off. So, with that being said, we got the wheels moving. I was away at a Department of Defense school in Washington, D.C., and on our way home, out in the middle of the interstate, we get a phone call from Debbie White, a good friend of ours. Her son's out here in the audience this morning, and started speaking with Linda. We've got to get this ball rolling. This is what I've done. I need some help. And Linda immediately on the phone, traveling down the interstate, went to work and has not stopped since, because it has taken a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of fundraising, and definitely a lot of educating ourselves on how immigration works, how visas work, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. It's incredible. It's incredible what we don't know is the biggest thing. But with that being said, I'd like to introduce my wife, Linda, and she's going to give you an idea of all the different avenues that she's had to go through to make this possible for Miss Natalie to be here today.
Okay. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just a mom of 6 kids, 18 grandkids, and 2 great-grandkids. But anyways, we were in the car, as Greg said, and I immediately called the embassy, and I said, how do I get this young girl out of Ukraine? And they said very simply, you just get an F1 visa, and you'll need to have $30,000 sitting in a bank account that you've got to prove you don't need. Well, after 18 kids and 6 kids and all those birthdays and graduations and weddings, there wasn't no $30,000 in my bank account. So we gathered all our money, every little dime out of a checkbook or wherever I could find. We put it together and then borrowed the rest. Then we had to find a school that would accept Natalie. Normally this is like a 6-month process, but we're so grateful to U of M. We have a son going to U of M, and they said they would take Natalie because they were the only school, one of the only schools that could provide an English course without having it done prior before she enters America. So at that point we had to get a visa for Natalie. It was $200, and then another $285 for her to get a CVIS. And that's a new word for me too. I'm not quite sure to this day what it is, but it has something to do with schools. And then we put her on a train ride from Chervenisti going into Kiev, and that was an 8-hour train or bus ride, and of course an 18-year-old going through the uprising wasn't safe, so Mom went too. It was crucial for us to get Natalie out, and I don't mean to embarrass Natalie on this, but it's not, I'm a foreign exchange representative in this area. We have had many, many kids come through, and Natalie was different than all the rest. That's why our heart is so into Natalie. And we love our foreign exchange student from Russia too. The sad thing about it is Natalie's family, Natalie was different for us because most kids who are foreign exchange student come and they want to see America and get the most out of their 1 year that they're here. Natalie had a little bit of a twist that really touched our heart. The entire year that she was here, every weekend she asked us, what can I do to volunteer, to become a part? So every weekend we were somewhere doing volunteer work with Natalie. And if we couldn't find one, she created one, like cleaning up lakes and rivers and for St. Clair County and so forth. Natalie's family, her daddy lost his job 6 years ago. And just like Michigan, they have the failing economy also. Her mom was only making, I believe, $329 a month. They were living in a one-bedroom apartment once Daddy lost his job. And a one-bedroom apartment meant that Natalie, being the princess, gets the bedroom on a futon, and brother sleeps on a balcony wrapped in aluminum foil, and Mom and Dad get the couch. In the middle of the night came a knock at 10 o'clock at night, and it was the police. Dad got off the couch and looked in a peephole and saw a military police officer and a policeman there. They were coming to get her brother, who was 2 years older than she is. Dad didn't answer the door, and it wasn't because this is not a patriotic family. They are truly a patriotic family. They love their country. And Natalie's dad didn't answer because, as Natalie said, she has a failing grandma and grandpa that live right in the room next to them. And grandpa needs to be turned and taken out of wheelchairs, and if the brother had gone, which he was working at a coffee house and only making $23, they needed that income because now Mom lost her job during this past summer. And now they were living off of $24 a month, which was her to tutor other children. We were helping support the family through this past year. And Natalie became malnourished and was hospitalized for a little bit because she wanted to keep that money so Grandma and Grandpa and everybody else could eat. Natalie would only eat potatoes. Sorry. So, where did I leave off? Okay, so Natalie is now in Kiev. And we had to wait 1 week for her to wait for her appointment at the embassy. And then finally, she, on a Friday, was told that she was allowed to go. 70% of the people who were standing in line in front of her were denied that day trying to flee their country. 2 girls that were standing in front of Natalie were foreign exchange students also, and they too were denied. Natalie was panicked and just thought she should turn around. There was no chance, but they did give Natalie a chance, and I believe God was in that chance, and that $30,000 sure did help too. So Natalie, we knew that the invasion was about to happen, and we had to get her out right away. So there was no chance to get a 2-week notice to an airplane ride and get a cheaper reduced rate. We had to pay a $1,500 non-refundable flight for her to get here. And we got her out on Tuesday, so we thought. The only flight that I could find was her getting from Kiev, flying into Warsaw, Poland. And then from Warsaw, Poland, she went into Frankfurt, Germany. Once she got to Frankfurt, Germany, she had to stay there 16 hours on a layover. After the layover, She was to fly on to DC, a 9-hour flight, and then another 5-hour layover in DC and then on to Detroit. Since we were stationed in Germany for 12 years and worked with the USO, I called the USO in Frankfurt and said, could you help our daughter in the name of Greg, being military, give her a place to sleep in those 16 hours. She's coming with no money. Can you get her a sandwich? My friend said, Linda, we are on the domestic side of the airport. Natalie's flying international. She's not allowed to leave that secured area. And I go, gosh darn, you're right. So I called another friend who worked in the domestic area, and I said, Robert, can you get Natalie and get her to the employee lounge and get her a sandwich? And he goes, did you just say that she's flying in from Warsaw, from Kiev? And I said, yes. He goes, well, that means she is now landed in the domestic area and we will arrest her as soon as she arrives. And I said, why would you do that? Well, 2 weeks prior, they had arrested a young girl, and it's kind of like, we don't understand that. We have such freedom in America to go where we want to. And in her country, they had to be policed, basically, to make sure she lands here. But by landing, it's like us going to Chicago. We can get off the airplane and walk right out. Well, because she had gone from Kiev to Warsaw, that put her in a domestic area where she could have just walked right out.
And at that time, she didn't have a visa to enter those other countries.
And still doesn't.
And still does.
So, and what they had done to that other girl prior was that they arrested her, put her in jail, took her, and then deported her back to her own country and pulled her passport so she could never leave her country again. Natalie was in hours of being on that same flight. We had to cancel that $1,500 non-flight, refundable flight, and pay another $1,500 to get her on the next flight. And we did everything we could to try to find a flight, 9 hours on the phone, working with people, trying to find a flight that would just get her into Frankfurt from Kiev. Well, that happened, and then as soon as she landed here, within 10 days she had to be enrolled in a college. First, she has to take a TOEFL test, and the TOEFL test was another $285, which she passed and we're really proud of. And U of M was now going to allow, we're so thankful to U of M for that, but now with the grace of God, it has such strict regulations. Sometimes Greg and I got so frustrated, as a joke, we would say, okay, we're gonna throw her in the trunk of our car, we're gonna bring her into Mexico and walk across that border and we'll get all the benefits we want, you know. But that was a joke, don't quote me. So anyways, Natalie is now here, and she will be attending SC4 in January, which will reduce our cost. And there are so many more costs in this. The cost of, you have to have insurance, a health insurance, according to the government, and you have to also have, which was $1,400, and also a $5,000 policy in case she gets pregnant and we can take care of that child, and another $5,000 in case she dies here so we can ship her body back. But now that she's coming to SC4, we lose all of that, and we have to start all over again on another insurance plan. So the cost just keeps rising and rising, and in the last 10 weeks we've spent over $20,000 to keep her here. Legally, I'm not allowed to say that to you because according to the government, we are financially, because we have $30,000 in the bank, supposed to support her. But we're trying to keep her here for more than a year. Our goal is to keep her here for at least 2 years, when Natalie can then join the military, if that's where her goal is at this point, who knows, in 2 years. And so in 2 years she is eligible to join the military, and once she is in the military she become an American citizen. Natalie's studying foreign affairs so that she can work with our government and her government and bring peace between the nations. She just loves America, and today Craig will be passing out some envelopes, and you know, you don't need to be a person that has to be a hero or anything to make a difference in somebody's life. Every day if we just listen to the pregnant lady who needs help to take a kid, you know, her kids while she's in the hospital, to the homeless person on the street. Every one of us can make a difference in somebody else's life. And if you were going to think about Christmas this year, or an angel on a tree or whatever, we ask that you think about and pray about Natalie's family, and if you can help in any way to help her with her financial quest, we'd appreciate it. And we have envelopes for you if you'd like to take that home, pray about it, and they're self-addressed. And God bless you, and God bless America.